Oh, you thought we were done infiltrating things? Think again. If Games Workshop won't release a proper Alpha Legion 40k release, we will instead infiltrate this one and try to sneak in some Alpha Legion colors in here. But before we can sneak in some Alpha Legion colors into this model, we have a look at the sprues and have to build the model. Foolish enough wants to have raised his lance against Nagash, Vhordrai and his Crimson Keep are now bound to the Supreme Lord of the Undead by an unbreakable curse. With this two sprues you can build Prince Vhordrai or a Revenant Draconess. As every Games Workshop kit, you need a bit of preparation to remove mold lines and get everything together. I did a little sub-assembly to have an easier paint job on Prince Vhordrai and added some texture paste to the base, as well as a skeleton of an Underworld's warband. Shordmaire, the zombie dragon, is attached to the stone column, so I had to build it in one piece. After that I primed the model with black primer, and you can use every black primer you prefer. I used Chaos Black by Citadel. As said before, the feet of Shordmaire are attached to the stone column and therefore a sub-assembly wasn't possible. On Prince Vhordrai, on the other hand, I did a sub-assembly. As you can see, I did not attach the spear, his leash, his shield and his saddle, and also his right leg. That should make painting a lot easier. So let's start. First, grab a white primer and do a zenithal highlight. In my case, I used the airbrush because I like to have more control where I put the highlights. But it's totally fine to use a rattle can to do this step. By doing a zenithal prime, you have natural shadows on the model, which really benefits because we want to use a lot of contrast paints or speed paints or whatever you call them. You should have a similar result to this one, and as you can see, I added some white spots onto the base, and on these spots I want to use some fluorescent colors to really make some magical things happen. But more on that later. As you can see, I also did a zenithal highlight on parts of Prince Vhordrai and left his armor black, because I want to use metallic paints to paint these parts, as well as on his saddle and on his shield. If you use the rattle can to do the zenithal highlight, just paint the parts black before you use the metallics. If you really want to make your express colors, contrast colors or speed paints pop, you can enhance the contrast of the zenithal highlight by adding some highlights by brush. You can also use the dry brush method, but I really recommend using a white color in the brush to get the most out of it. As the contrast colors flow into the recesses, you will have a better effect on the whole model if you're using these kind of colors by adding some highlights with a pure white. As you can see, I did this on the front of Shordmaire, and for the back I used a little cheat code, so to say. Yes, I dry brushed the back. Because we have the focal point on the front, I thought I could use the fast and dirty method for the backside of the model. I also did this step on Prince Vhordrai himself and left out every bit of armor he's wearing or has attached to his saddle. Now on to some colors. As said before, I wanted to sneak in some Alpha Legion colors, and therefore we had to paint Shordmaire in a pale blue. For this pale blue I used the Vallejo Express color Iceberg Grey and applied it with the airbrush. Of course, on a proper zombie dragon there needs to be a little bit of blood. Or a lot of blood, I don't know. So we used an oil color for this one. To be precise, it's Alizarin Crimson Hue of the Norma Professional line by Schminke. Give it a proper mix with some white spirit to get a wash-like consistency. And as you can see, it already looks like blood, so let's get it onto the model. The good thing about oil colors is that you can just tip onto the model and it will flow into the recesses by itself. You can even do little strokes to simulate blood running down of the open parts of the flesh. After that, I used some skeleton horde contrast color by Citadel to paint every bone part of the model. Of course, you can use every bone contrast or speed paint color you like. Now this already starts looking like a real zombie dragon. But we want to enhance on the blue, because the Alpha Legions are not pale blue. Or are they? So in the next step we want to highlight the inside of the wings by using turquoise lights by Abteilung 502 oil colors. Add some spots with a brush and after that use a sponge to blur the color onto the inside of the wings. On some parts you want to have more control over the blurring of the oil color and therefore you can use another brush. In my newest scheme of the Alpha Legion I used some purples in the shadow and therefore I wanted to add some purples to really add to the effect of the wings on this zombie dragon too. For this step I used Luxion Purple by the Contrast color line. On Prince Vhordrai's armor I wanted to use a pale gold and therefore I chose Relictor Gold and applied it with the airbrush. I used Masking Putty by PK Pro to protect the cloak. I also used Relictor Gold on the metal parts of the saddle, the shield, as well as every other armor part of Prince Vhordrai. If you're using an airbrush like I do, just be sure to not hit anything that you don't want to be gold, like the fabrics on the saddle for example. After that I added some Blood Angel's Red to every fabric I could find. To give the metal parts a little bit of depth, I washed them with Agrax Earthshade and added here and there a little bit of Drakenhof Nightshade to make it more interesting for the eye. After it dried completely, I used Aluminium by Vallejo to dry brush over all metal parts to highlight them. And as you can see, it already starts to look like a finished model. I added some Gore-Grunter Fury to the roots of the stone column on the base, and after that I added some brown to the leather parts of Prince Vhordrai's armor and washed them with Agrax Earthshade. I also gave the leash a wash with Contrast Black Templar and added some Black Templar to his shield too. After that I used our oil color again to add some blood effect onto the shield. To make Prince Vhordrai's face look a little bit more vivid, even though he's a vampire, I added a very diluted part of the oil color to his ears, his eyes and his mouth too. After that I wanted to paint his little vial he's carrying on his belt. To do this I added some white highlights. I later painted with fluorescent ink by AK Interactive to make it look like it's green and shining. As you can see on the cloak I also added a light orange highlight onto the cloak with the airbrush. I accidentally forgot to record this step. What I did not forget is to record adding highlights to the face of Prince Vhordrai with some white. Just concentrate on the areas where the light would hit. On the leash I used some Glacier Blue by Vallejo to dry brush the whole fabric on the leash to give it a really quick highlight. To paint the stone column I used different washes like Nuln Oil, Seraphim Sepia or Agrax Earthshade to paint every stone separately. I also added some Athonian Chimer shades to replicate some mossy areas. The symbol of the Alpha Legion is the Hydra in bright green, and therefore I wanted to add a bright green to this model too. So I used the fluorescent green ink by AK Interactive again to spray it onto the white spots on the base. Even though it looks like Alpha Legion, it also represents some magics, summoning the undead skeletons beneath Prince Vhordrai's dragon. As you can see, if Alfarius would be a zombie dragon, it would be probably this Shordmaire. With this step done, the model already looks finished, but we have some parts to paint, like the spear, the skeleton on the base, and I think the base could need more skulls. So I got the skull sprue from Games Workshop, primed them with dead animal bits by Color Forge, added a 1-to-1 mix of Agrex Earthshade and water, and just gave them a quick dry brush with dead white. There's definitely more than one skeleton to be summoned by Prince Vhordrai. But let's add some contrast color to the banner. I chose Skeleton Horde again and waited until it's dry to add an oil color for highlight. As the highlight color I chose Light Flesh Tone by Epsilon 502 again and applied it with a sponge. In between, I dry brushed the whole spear with aluminium by Vallejo and added the express color Starship Steel to the whole spear. I added some of our bloody oil color to the banner too, and then this model was done. Of course you can add more and more details as you go, but I wanted to sneak in some Alpha Legion colors into this model. As you can see, the back is not painted that detailed as the front, but I will work on the model to make it stand out more. I also added some tufts and some snow to the base and painted the cloak of the skeleton on the base in a reddish tone. Now stay tuned for the next project I paint for Warhammer using the Vegetar Guardian robots, where I sneak an Alpha Legionnaire into a diorama. I think Prince Vhordrai is the most awesome model in the whole Soulblight range. Tell me in the comments if you think alike. If you did like this tutorial, please consider to subscribe to this channel and leave a like on this video. If this video convinced you to buy in Prince Vhordrai for yourself, consider to head to taschengeld.de.